Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Just Riffin with Jules Leyhe. I have a very special guest today, a really talented young guitar player that I've known about for some time, the one and only Ahren Shreeve. Ahren, great to have you on. How are you, man?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. I just got back from a trip to LA. I was out there for about 2 weeks, and I'm just kind of back in Boston now. It's snowing, um, and it's a big difference coming back right back from the sunny LA. But yeah, I'm doing well. Kind of catching up on stuff back here, and looking to go out there in another couple weeks. But it was cool to see you there and kind of have some impromptu jamming and be able to finally meet in person. I know we've been like talking about that for months. So
Yeah, and thank you, man. So Aaron and I have been in touch. We've known about each other for a while, and we kind of were hopeful that we'd see each other at NAM. But what do you know? It's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack, running into somebody at NAM if you don't have a concrete plan. So we missed each other at NAM, but we ended up seeing each other at Norm's Rare Guitars just earlier this week, and we got to jam. And I'm sure that YouTube video is not out just yet, but it might be out even later today. So we have that official collaboration under our belt. That was a really cool surprise. It was great. I was just playing a slide guitar. I was playing some licks, and I look up and Aaron's right here, and he says, "Hey, Jules, what's up, dude?" And so we started playing, and it was just a great way for us to
yeah,
meet. Um,
our friend Angela Petrilli connected us, and unfortunately, she got sick after NAM. She was gonna be there, but she was super kind to set that up for us, and
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Angela. We both appreciate it a lot. So, hey, let's hop right into it. Um, I have a handful of questions, and I know that we kind of game planned a little bit, but I think just getting right into some of the meat of what I'd love to talk to you about is tone development. And, I think tone is a journey that we're kind of all on, but I can't help but notice that when I hear you play, you definitely you sound the same, whatever you're playing. And I mean, maybe there are slight differences, subtle differences in the sound, but I can tell it's Ahren Shreeve from just hearing a couple of notes. And the same way I can tell it's BB King from when he hits one note, or somebody like that. So I guess I'd love to know some of your tone journey, some of what you're like looking for, and some of maybe the battles that you've gone through to get the sound that you have now. And obviously, I mean, I'm sure it's an evolving thing, but just talking about your tone and maybe if there are some tips for guitar players out there working on their tone, that sort of thing. But yeah.
great question. Yeah, and a lot of the um, little techniques that make you sound a certain way, regardless of what gear you're playing with, are coming from the fingers. So I think it's more appropriate to talk about that stuff rather than like amp settings for your question right now. Um, One thing that I like to do is a lot of micro bends. So usually this would happen on like the flat three, like for A minor. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Sometimes I'll bend that much, but usually really subtle. It's nice to be tasteful. So even notes like that, flat seven, where you wouldn't normally have it sounds a little weird if you exaggerate that micro bend. But if it's just subtle enough, flat seven, even one, right, as you're about to end, about to mute the note, just little micro bend to leave it off. So a lot of times that's I think that's making up a big part of my sound. Um, just micro bends all over the place. Uh, like when you're ending a note. Uh, So very, very subtle and hard to actually pick up on if you're just listening at full speed or listening in the context of a band or anything. But if you slow this stuff down, this is how I picked it up, is from transcribing other solos slowed down. Um, it's very, very subtle, like I said. So another thing I think is um, just like maybe where I set my volume knob on the guitar. Um, I never like to have it all the way open at 10. Um, 9 max. So 6 for rhythm stuff. And then if I'm playing lead, I might turn it up to 7.5. 8, 8.5. But 10 is very exposed. There's a lot of it's harder for me to feel inspired at 10. There's a lot of frequencies going on. It's wider range, more open, exposed, and there's those um, little like scratchy. There's like a scratchy characteristic to it that kind of gets in the way. And if you just tame it just a little bit, just roll back to 9 or 8, it gets rid of that scratchiness. Um,
And so maybe some of that has to do with like uh, there's a little more gain there available to you, and you're playing with this like higher end of the spectrum, but not the top end of like, oh yeah, it's full bore and everything's there, because that's too much. But it's more interesting when you don't have it all the way up there, but it's getting up there, and then your touch sensitivity is telling a lot more of the story. It sounds like.
yeah, yeah, you have a lot more like at 10. It's if you try to have a light touch, it's very reactive still. Like it's hard to control it. But if you're at 10, you can pick hard and also soft, and it's very controllable that way. Yeah, but yeah, with the gain, that's a good point.
Cool. I love that. And it's just nice to hear, it's the answer is not turning all of your stomp boxes on and having your amp maxed and, you know, this ear shattering volume that like will get you kicked out of your apartment or something like that. That is not the secret to your tone by any means.
Why not? I mean, it might be fun to try that stuff, but
Right.
maybe not the most applicable.
Sure, sure. And just on that note of, I really appreciate the micro bend focus, because obviously as like a bluesy guy and a lot of slide stuff that I play, that ends up being quite a bit of the sound for sure. Now I'm not playing slide right now, but I can say that whenever I'm playing out there, whenever I'm playing, I like to focus on that sort of micro bend type of thing in a little different way than Ahren probably does. But
Hmm.
right, that like
Yeah,
that sort of thing. There's like a little bit of gospel in there, and like a lot of sort of the vocal sound. Um,
even without the slide, it sounds like you're playing a slide. Yeah.
Definitely, that's a cool. It is cool to like of your Venn diagram of sounds and styles. It's cool to be able to draw in like, okay, fretted is over here and slide is over here, but with those, being able to kind of mix and match, depending on how much you bent a note, whether you did that thing where you go and like sliding across a string or something, because then that ends up getting more of a, there's definitely some inherent sliding around with your fingers that can sound a lot like slide. So it's cool to just be able to like, if you guys out there aren't trying some of these techniques already, it's a really great way to just take what you're already doing and just zoom in on the finer details, get more out of your playing, see how much you can get away with bending that root, like the one, like you said, because that's actually a really interesting note. There are some interesting notes that, like, if you handle them the right way, they can do a lot more for you than you might have thought originally.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's interesting. Like if you just bend the one, it's not gonna sound good. You're bending into the flat too. It's just not right. But if you bend it just the like just like a not even a half step, just a quarter step or even less, just add that little bit of imperfection. Like you know what I mean? It's not completely in tune. It's more like a vocalist that way. I
Yeah.
remember something you said at Norm's that I didn't know about with playing slide. You actually fret with the slide sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I can demonstrate that too if you want to see it.
Definitely, yeah. Because
Let me grab the side really quick.
when you were just playing with your finger, it's not all that different from like fretting with the slide.
Yeah, and so this is a really cool technique. This is a great way of, like we were just talking about blending techniques and sort of your Venn diagram going, however which combination of different styles you want. So this is a standard tune guitar. This is not my super duper comfort zone when it comes to playing slide. Something that I'm working on more, and I can play some standard tuned guitar in slide. But if you know me at all, I prefer open E or open D tuning. But that doesn't stop me from being able to do stuff like this. So this is like second string, and I'm in the key of E minor here, right? Or like E. And I'm going to play some lines going across the string with my slide. But if you actually physically fret with the slide, you can actually get a lot of really, really cool tones. And right, that starts to really sound like Derek Trucks or something. He's doing that in some of those faster runs where you can now just sort of throw your slide at the fret and it's going to play the note in tune because you're now just fretting with the slide. So for some of those fast, like pentatonic runs, it'll be like. And this is like a Strat single coil. This is it works fine, but this is like tonally a little different than how I usually do my slide stuff. But for the sake of just showing that that's a really cool, like, that's the slide guitar version of what I was just doing by playing things like, right? So that sort of thing. And I know now that takes us to another great thing, which is I'm just curious about, for you, inspirations that you have for both single note lines and for chordal harmony. Because I noticed, something that's really cool about your playing. I love how you add double stops, triple stops. It sounds like a lot of. I'd just love to hear, like, if you have some specific heroes who play like that, or people who got you playing like that yourself, and what you're listening for, what you're thinking of when you're playing things that are more like you're expanding your harmony by adding double stops and triple stops into your lines.
So it's more singers. It's more influenced by singers like Aretha Franklin, um, like any of those old soul R&B singers, and the new ones as well. I love listening to SZA, Beyonce, Rihanna. Um, I get a lot of inspiration out of their melodies, and off of that, um, harmonies. You know how they harmonize their melodies, and especially in the older gospel stuff, like they'll have amazing harmonies, and I try to get some of that with with triads, harmonizing with three notes, or harmonizing one melody with two other notes. Um,
Could you give us a little example of something like that?
for sure, yeah. And for guitar, like Derek Trucks does a lot of this too. So I definitely like have a lot of inspiration from him. But he'll say the same thing. I think like vocalists he'll take from like Aretha Franklin, stuff like that. So yeah, a melody. Say we're in C. Yeah, so let's take the melody from uh, that song with a little help from my friends. Now with triads. So yeah, I'm just hearing out, what the harmony should be there. Regular C triad, and then usually I'm going like 1-4-1 or 1-2-1. But here on the second chord, I need to change because it goes to the 5 chord. So I'm going to outline 5 with some harmonies there, and then 2. That's the chord underneath. So doing a first inversion D minor, land on that D minor, second version now. It's like a 5 the 13 on it, back to 1. So that's a little bit more of a complicated harmony, but usually I'm doing like 1-2-1-2-1-2-1 through, if you're gonna assign chord numbers to it, or 1-4-1-4-1. But it's all, I'm hearing it all out, and harmonies are like one of the most inspiring things to me. So that's what I love to hear in my head and try to put on the guitar. It's so fun.
Yeah, awesome, man. It's a really beautiful part of your playing. And I notice that also when you're doing this sort of thing, you'll even put vibrato on. I feel like what you were saying earlier about like bending notes. You're even wiggling those triads, and there's always a little bit of potential sort of like life or wiggle or some intonation, some bending on basically almost anything to just not have it stagnant and not just go, oh, B, 7th fret of the first string, and it's just this kind of, because then you get into this like, yeah, just kind of like you're not really playing very thoughtfully. But I don't find that that's ever really an issue for you. You're not just hanging out like turning your brain off. It's always very like there's, the notes are conscious, they're alive. You're really attentive when you're playing, and that is definitely apparent in the whole triad application. When you're harmonizing a line or something or a melody, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's something that's not easy to any guitar player. We have a tendency to noodle and just play muscle memory licks. It's exciting, to just go around and play a bunch of notes, but that's something I've been working on so much, is just playing intentionally, playing thoughtfully, and hearing what I want to play and try to play. It really comes from like playing something new, trying to play something you never played before. I think that's what improv is all about.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate that. And obviously, that is what improvisation is all about. And it's funny, that just reminded me of a moment we had at Norm's when we were just sitting down. We were just about to shoot the video. And I just played a lick or two on this slide guitar that was handed to me for our video. And man, I played this one little phrase that just, the tone was just like, it was just there. It's this gold foil pickup guitar that I'd never played before. And so here I was just about to play with you on Norms and like just coaxed this new sound out of this guitar for the first time. And I got inspired. And it was like exactly what you said. I mean, I think I went for the lick. I mean, I just called it a lick. So I've probably played it a bunch the idea that I went for or whatever. But thanks to this new guitar that I didn't really know, it came out sounding like, whoa, like that was this sound that I was like, I want to go chase that now. And I think kind of at the end of the day, it's funny, I've gone through so many phases of like trying to play only like myself, and whether it was like with what I was doing here or pedals or just kind of whatever it was. And then I've gone through phases of like really copying people note for note and like trying to, like imitate somebody really as closely as I could. And at the end of the day, the conclusion I've come to is just, it's all gravy. No one way is better than another. But I think the thing that might make somebody like you or myself most happy in the long run is finding our own unique sound and our voice, and not just copying. Because as fun as it is to just copy Stevie Ray Vaughan licks, it does get a little bit like, all right, who is Ahren Shreeve now? Who is Jules Leyhe?
I think eventually, if you learn a solo, learn it note for note, try to copy all the details, like do your best recreation of it exactly. If you play that for long enough, if you learn it and play it every day and play it along with the track and play it along with the metronome or a drum groove and just play it for months, you'll eventually it'll just eventually become your own. Like you'll start pulling these licks out in your own playing, but have your own style to it. I think that just like will naturally happen if you keep on workshopping something.
I agree completely, and I get asked that question a lot. I have a handful of students right now that are working on transcribing for the first time, and it's really hard at first because we're listening to some legendary person, and it's a song that we know and love, and we've heard this 1,000 times, but we never thought we'd actually start to learn how the guitar solo works or how to play it, and that can be a really daunting task. But breaking through that barrier and getting to the point where you're internalizing this, not just digging this thing because it's exciting and we're rocking out, but we're actually the guitar player going, oh, okay, I hear, that slide from the position down here to up here. That sort of, I agree completely. And not only like learning a song or two, but like entire records. You're right, and I think for people who have been playing for a long time, like you and I have, we probably have just countless, entire records or entire solos, or just like, oh yeah, you start just picking up on what somebody's doing because you've internalized that music for so long that really isn't a process that has much of a shortcut, but it's just a body of work. And you just said it, if you do that for months and months and months, and you're really focusing on all those tiny little details, you might start to get where you kind of want to be after that sort of really hard work and dedication to,
Absolutely. Yeah. Those the small details are the key. Yeah. And like you said, internalizing it, that's a great way to put it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering like when you got into slide playing and if you kind of how you came across that and how you worked on that and um how was the learning experience um especially like switching over to open tuning.
Yeah, that's a great question. And something that I get asked a lot is just right, the open E tuning, which is what I play slide in most of the time. Um, as great as it is, it's challenging at first because you're going, okay, well, I've got my cage system. I know that this is an F chord or whatever. We're starting to like really kind of figure out some of these systems in place with standard tuning. So it seems like kind of counterintuitive to like disregard it by going to this other tuning. And if you've ever played in something like Dadgad, it's just different. It's a different mindset that you have. But for me, what happened was I really grew up loving blues music and listening to a lot of blues and like early blues. I was really into uh, Charlie Patton, Blind Gary Davis, Blind Blake, Robert Johnson, just like the old badass blues guys. And when I was listening to the early slide recordings, like Elmore James, I realized, there's like something else going on because there's this sort of ease and casual nature that these guys are playing with that I'm missing out on here. So I discovered that they tune their guitar to this open chord, and I just kind of started throwing my slide around, and I was like, oh, okay. If this is an E, and you just go like this, then this is a G at the third fret. This is your A. So I've got my 1, 4, 5. You don't need a ton more to really get started if you then have just some like position based licks and phrases. But I started out by struggling and not sure what people were doing on the recordings. The first guy that I think I started really wrapping my head around a little bit more was Muddy Waters, and he's awesome. As great of a slide player as he is, his stuff is all in standard tuning, and it's really kind of, well, mostly in standard tuning anyway. Um, there might be some open G that he plays in, but yeah, but Muddy Waters is so cool because it's very visceral, and he's just like playing. He kind of has like the Muddy Waters slide guitar solo, and he doesn't have like 100 different solos. He's not like a Derek Trucks type. Like, oh, we're playing The Sky's Crying. Let me take a different approach at it each time. He kind of does the same thing most of the time. So it was a good way of like getting used to it, and I could kind of like stick the landing with that. But then I got way into like understanding what Dwayne Allman was doing. That was kind of the biggest like gateway to sort of modern electric slide playing, open E tuning, and really like getting your right hand going so that you can like mute what you're not playing, because muting what you're not playing is just such a huge part of slide, and like goes to that whole like yeah, it's funny. You're you're playing like one or maybe two strings at a time, and you're muting 4 or 5 at a time. So what ends up taking a lot of your conscious thought at first is like this muting game, because you're actually trying to cover up the mess a lot of the time. So once I got comfortable with that and developed a right hand technique, and I'd say that really happened at Berkeley, with my one of my all time favorite slide guitar players and just sort of life heroes, David Tronzo. Tronzo taught me. We had 3 years of private study together where he helped get my right hand together. It's funny, he did something called universal tuning, which is where you tune your high E, your first E string, down to D. And it gives you all these triads. You have a G triad, and now you have a D triad on the top 3 strings. Um, or you have all these different triads available to you with this universal tuning. And so it yeah, so it was like this standard tuning, and now you drop your high E down a whole step to a D.
Do you mind if I try this real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah, yeah. So, so you get a G, right? Yeah, it's really interesting what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so one fret. You can hammer on that. Oh, the shapes are weird. Interesting. Okay.
So that's a really hip tuning that I want to get more into. I like, it's funny. I appreciate other tunings. The most other tunings I've ever really gotten into, what I think was playing Leo Kottke style 12-string guitar. That would be like open. Well, he would tune down to open B, so like open E tuning, but down a fourth to B. A lot of like open
So
G.
those B, it's two B strings in a row then, right?
Uh, well, I mean like a standard tune, but down a fourth.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah,
So
because
like,
he's
yeah,
playing a
it's
12
low.
string, so it still sounds kind of high with the. But yeah, there were like other crazy tunings that he would play in, and I definitely in my whatever part of my life I'm heading into now, I think a phase that I want to get into is exploring some open tunings a little more. You saw how cool this one is, universal tuning. You just drop your high E string down a whole step to D, and it opens up all these different voicings, and there are all these different triads all over the place.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll have to mess around with that tuning more and see what the strengths are, what the benefits are over the shapes that I'm used to. Like I'm just used to doing that stuff, but drop it down here, different.
It's kind of like a little bit of like the Keith Richards thing, almost like that mentality, right? Of like dropping your low string and then just going, yeah, I'm really gonna. I have a couple patterns here that I'm gonna make a really good career out of. you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Oh, definitely interesting. Yeah.
Now, on that note, I just brought up David Tronzo at Berkeley, and I know that somebody that we share in our past in common is one of my other favorite teachers in my whole life for sure, but especially at Berkeley, and somebody that I know you studied with as well, and that's Julian Casper. And for anybody out there, Julian's just an amazing combination of his playing. Really has so many roots in Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck. I mean, guys like Alan Holdsworth, and he has just a really beautiful sound, and I respect the heck out of his musicianship and just the care he plays with. But I'm curious about something that you took away from studying with Julian, and some of your time at Berkeley.
He was a really cool player and definitely opened my eyes to a lot of different expression than I was used to. So I think he's a big fan of Jeff Beck's playing, and he takes a lot of inspiration from Jeff Beck. Um, we did a solo. I'll get into that in a second. We transcribed the Jeff Beck solo, which is one of my most influential transcriptions. But we also did a lot of work with sight reading that no other guitar teacher has really. I mean, aside from chord charts and real book stuff, we did some sight reading from like I forget it was for made like a book made for trumpet or a wind instrument. So that was really cool to get into. Very challenging. Sight reading is not easy on guitar, but it definitely led to some discovery of new ways to organize notes. Like we always have our boxes, but if you play you can come up with different ways. So that was interesting. I wonder if you had the same experience. Did you work on sight reading at all with Julian?
Good question. Not as much with Julian, but the biggest takeaway for me with Julian was, and you said it, was, and the reason I play guitar at all is because I saw Jeff Beck when I was a kid, and so that started my Jeff Beck and his music are just so deep in my musical DNA that when I saw there was a Jeff Beck lab at Berkeley, I was like, how early do you have to wake up in the morning to sign up for that? Because I need to be in that class. So I remember just the attention to detail, somebody who actually understood that sound, between the whammy bar technique, the off kilter, unorthodox, just like kind of head to toe style of Jeff Beck, to actually understand it and have somebody who is an expert at it and who could show me, the way. That was the biggest thing that I took away from studying with Julian for sure. Because yeah, just that a lot of people listen to it and just go, "Wow, that's wild." It's just kind of from outer space, but no, it's actually done by a human being, and his name was Jeff Beck.
Yeah, it's cool that you were really so deep into Jeff X playing already. I was familiar with it, and throughout high school, I loved his. I forget the name of the album, but it had "Cause We've Ended as Lovers" on it, and that I don't know. Is it Blow by Blow? Is that the
Blow
album?
by
Yeah,
blow,
yeah.
yeah.
I love that album. I would listen front to back like so many times each day at high school. So I was familiar with that album and the song that Julian introduced to me was Lilac Wine. Um,
Off Emotion and Commotion.
yeah, yeah. So it's a cover, right? It's not his own, but it's a
Right.
beautiful rendition of it, and like I love the vocals in it as well. But yeah, just working with the whammy bar and figuring out it does sound like a slide. It's pretty crazy how he has that control, and it's really interesting to work on that. So that's what I mean by like my seeing expression in a different way, like working on vocal playing with a slot with a not with a slide with a whammy bar. Um, I've never done that before, so again, like you said, you get into all the details, and he really knows what he's talking about with Jeff Beck's playing and his own take on it as well. So I found that
And,
really interesting.
absolutely, man. And just to sort of illustrate one of those techniques, for everybody who's watching and might want to get into some of what we're talking about here, one of my favorite things, it's this awesome, like, it's like a pitch bend lick from a synthesizer. So this would be like Jeff Beck and Jan Hammer like duking it out on something like Lead Boots. But here's an example. So I'm playing a G note here, and this is at the 8th fret of the B string. And now a way that you can get some of this sort of off kilter sound into your playing would be like. And so it's this sort of like you're bending the F to the G, and then you actually want to play the G. But where it gets really interesting is if you can like. There's just all sorts of little like unapologetically, off by a little bit types of notes. That is the sort of thing that Ahren and I are talking about right here.
A solo shouldn't be all you. It's you're still part of the band, and you want to play. You want to have as even during your solo, you want to have as much contribution to the overall sound as the other band members do. It's all a team. And when I'm playing my when I have my favorite moments on stage, it's the drummer is helping me build up. The drummer is giving me rhythmic ideas. The keyboard player is giving me inversions to do some cool or chord substitutions to do some. It's all like a team effort, and yeah, so like that's you got to make a solo that complements the song, and sometimes just starting a solo like that is appropriate for some songs. Um, Say like "Shook Me All Night Long" by AC/DC.
Right.
Starts right, but it's still very tasteful. Like that's a complete phrase, and then he follows up space slow build. So it's very high energy, but there's still phrasing that makes sense. Um, so you don't always have to start very calm, but overall, like having that phrasing and being a team member with the rest of the band is most important.
It's a great point. And, any time that anybody says something like, well, don't do this, I'm sure there's a really great famous example that we all know of basically the opposite happening. Or right. So everything's kind of like contextually based. But in general, it really is, I try to not shoot my wad. If I'm going to take a long solo, I don't want to come out of the gate too hot. I love doing things like coming out and going like. It's like, oh man, well, where is that going? Because now I could. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of two ideas. If I just came out and the first thing I did was, it's just like a different vibe. Maybe that's where we are in the song, and so we want that. But, there's just kind of, if you're out there and you're trying to play with your band or write songs or something, you're in control of all of this. If you're playing I Want to Be Sedated, you might not have all this patience and reward and everything. That's just kind of a different vibe. You know, your solo is probably going to be more like, so there's
You still
just
want it to be cohesive. You still want it to match and complement the song and be cohesive. But yeah.
yeah, man. And that's something that I notice whenever I watch you play. You were just saying it, but you're you're definitely playing. You're thinking about the ensemble when you're playing. You're kind of turning the audience into like the frog in the boiling water. Like, and what I mean by that is like, wow, like, if this started out simply, but based on you building your ideas and building your solo up, building the band is hopping on, and now you guys are all, you're all hip to the phrasing, and like every 4 bars maybe you're turning it up a little bit or whatever, but by the end it's like, whoa, we're cooking. And it takes a while to get there, and that I definitely noticed that you are really, that's a great strength in your playing, is building it up so that by the end we go, well, shit, that was just great, and then you call it a day and you're out, and the people are just like, man, really so I think that, right, it's not just about taking a solo, it's about having the band build your solo with you. And I mean, we're really nothing if the band isn't doing that with us. So that's like a whole art form on its own, and a strength of your playing for sure, man. It's a really great thing to just highlight and talk about, because I think a lot of people just wonder, how did that all happen? And it's an ensemble thing when it's really cooking and when everybody's listening.
That's absolutely how it should be. Yeah, it's there's no like sure like the spotlight is maybe on whoever's soloing, but it's you couldn't be there. You couldn't be doing that without the band. You couldn't even be sounding good without the band giving you ideas and supporting you, supporting the growth. So it's yeah. So you're still playing the band is playing as much as the solo as you are.
And an example of that, like in my world, I play in this band called the Almond Brothers, and we do like a pretty faithful Almond Brothers tribute, and it's super cool. I get to play a lot of slide and dip into my Derek Trucks and Dwayne Allman influences, and do my own thing. But we play a lot of those songs are in A minor, and a lot of them are pretty similar, and we wouldn't be doing that well and having a great time if every single song was just this flat dynamic level. We're all listening and going through peaks and valleys and kind of telling this story. You can get away with playing songs that are kind of in a similar vibe if you and the band are all really listening and you guys are good at being able to play dynamically and thoughtfully. And so that's just like an example in my life where a lot of the songs, not all of them, but a lot of them are in A minor. And we can stay in kind of that zone a lot of the night, and nobody minds, because we've got this ability to still tell a story with the elements, and not just wail, not just peak the whole time, because that really is boring after like two of those or something. We're just pretty bored.
Yeah, but those are great points to make, and really important for a lot of guitar players to understand that.
Yeah.
I need to remind myself that all the time. It's just like natural to slip out a bit and get excited.
Yeah. And one video that I put up on my YouTube channel maybe about a month ago, was about playing was about singing what you're playing. And like literally, like and just like really not being surprised by what the guitar is doing, and having this sort of frank connection with it, where I understood, I knew what was going to come out. I was in charge up here, down here, and then I wasn't surprised. That's not to say I'm never surprised, but as much as possible, having one thought going on, one clear, just connective, like not being distracted by a ton of stuff, but just having one thing coming out. I feel like that sort of connection to your instrument helps immensely, as far as like a lot of our favorite guys have that thing where they just go, there's this efficiency in thought. and that comes out as a really clear sound with great tone, great feel. The time feels great. It's just this like simple, beautiful thing, and it comes from this sort of like whittling away at the things you don't need while you're playing and leaving only what you do need.
Yeah, I think that's a great exercise, singing while you're playing, but also singing before you play, like um, da, 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 and then so you're listening, you sing it first, it comes straight from your head, you're not following any shapes, and then you have to remember what you had in your head and then put it on the guitar. Um, I
Great
think that's
exercise.
another
It's
level of
awesome.
it. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And hey, so we're kind of rounding third, headed for home here. Um, but I wanted to just wrap up with one last question. Are there, based on what we were just talking about right there, are there any tips that you give students or would have for everybody watching to just help with practice, like help with an efficient practice routine? Are there some things that you would tell people to specifically not do while they're practicing? What are just some like, tips on practice and ways to kind of like, we are just talking about efficiency and kind of getting rid of the crap you don't need to do. What are some things that come to mind when you think of that?
Things to not do. There, there's not a lot I can think of, but just having a clean tone. Like, I know it's kind of boring, but Tomo Fujita will talk about this all the time. Is like no reverb, no effects, clean. I I don't think reverb is that bad. It's definitely good to play without it sometimes, but um, I it's a little bit maybe like too boring for me to play without reverb. It
Me
definitely
too.
I can see it, but then I say like it's nice to practice unplugged too, and that's obviously no reverb. So it's definitely helpful for getting that exposed sound. But no effects, all right? Like no overdrive, no delay, clean, and just have that pure tone. Focus on clarity and precision. Um, I think a very important uh, part of practicing is playing with a slow metronome. So putting a metronome at 60 BPM and playing all your exercises to that, even if you're um, learning some licks or a melody from transcription, find what tempo the song is at and slow it down half, um, and practice along with the slow metronome. So you have more responsibility over keeping time, and you strengthen your internal metronome that way. Also, at a slower speed, you're able to focus on more of the details of technique, um, and make those into good habits. So when you do speed it up, when you do apply it to a gig or to real life playing, um, it's already there. You're already playing efficiently. You have those good habits in place. But as far as things not to do, I would just say like try to avoid um, lots of effects, um, and yeah, I think that's all I can think of for things not for things to avoid. Um, just try to be focused with the exercises that you're using and try to make. I got a lot out of writing them down on a sheet of paper and just having them on my desk where I practice, so I can see. It's right in front of me. Like if it's on your phone, you look on it, you get a notification, you go on Instagram, you go on emails. Like having it right in front of you on a piece of paper kind of allows you to be focused and um, practice. Go through your 15-minute or 20-minute exercise routine each day, um, and then you can see yourself making progress. Consistency is definitely the most important thing. But yeah, have you found any things to avoid with practice?
It's great because it's basically the same thing. A lot of the time I'll get asked about like tone, and people are always wondering like, well, how'd you get that tone or whatever? And then when I hear them play, I can just tell that there's they don't know how to focus a lot of the times. It's hard to focus on what good tone is or how the heck I get it at all. And you said it earlier, ultimately, like when the first question I asked you, your sound and your tone development, it doesn't really matter about the amp and all that stuff. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about these guys right here. And so, really eliminating things like tons of reverb, tons of like right, effects. I'm right with you on the reverb thing. It's hard to get a really great sound without any reverb, or like using a little. I understand what Tomo's saying, especially for like funky stuff and working on your grid and making sure it's like perfect. You don't want these reverb trail. That's the opposite of really funky playing. But ultimately, I definitely understand the point and agree that we need to be able to get a good sound just from our hands and plugged right into whatever it is that we're playing into. And like, don't a lot of people will, I'll see like, oh, they have a giant pedal board, and the tone's not there, pedal board or not. So if that's the case, it's about this sort of learning how to get the tone from your hands, learning how to use things like your volume knob on the guitar, and with an amp that's like on the edge of breakup or something, and really learning how to get all those nooks and crannies so that you can go, hey, if I really hit it and I'm turned up most of the way, it's like nice and it's breaking up just right where I like it. But if I ease back on the volume just a little bit and I soften my touch, boy, I also have, I can eat my cake and have it as well, because I've got both worlds going on with like just how I touch the guitar. And if you don't understand how that works and you're not there, that's a great thing. But like living at the edge of breakup is just such a nice place to be, where if you really dig into one note, you can get it like, the harmonics are popping and it's distorted enough, there's enough gain. But if you just ease back on your attack and maybe the volume back a little bit, then it softens up a lot. That's where kind of the most like tonal options seem to really be, especially if you're into like blues, where you're really going to be like bending strings and expressing the notes with this sort of sound. There might be different ways of doing this for other guitars. If you're like big hollow body jazz guy with flat wound strings, you might have a slightly different thing. You might have a similar thing. You might like kind of edge of breakup. But, for our sort of like bluesy rock and roll sort of lead playing, but I'd say that, yeah, focusing on getting the sound from your hands and trying to just go as straight into an amp that's a good amp, like a Fender Blues Junior type of amp or something like that. Like that's like, yeah, great amp, great amp. I have right back here, down here, I have a Fender Tweed that was just hand wired for me. I'm loving this amp, and yeah, I do not really need a ton of stuff if I'm going through an amp that really works for me. My hands are telling the story, and I do. I have ended up doing things like I use a volume pedal and I have some reverb, and that when I'm playing slide, that definitely has to do with my sound. But I've only gotten to that point once I really understood like and had a good sound without it first. Then it just gives me another layer of things I can do, like a delay pedal or something, where obviously delay pedals are cool, but you don't want to, we get into this funny like um, like putting lipstick on a pig and then some rouge and then some mascara. That's not what's going to make that pig beautiful. That's that's not the right way we want to go. That's not getting great tone.
Learn how to get good tone without all that stuff. You can add those things in after, and you learn how to. You already know how to use them tastefully then.
Totally, exactly. So yeah, but everybody out there, rather than getting a bunch of pedals because some of your heroes use them, I guarantee you that every one of the people that you admire, they're going to sound like themselves, kind of whatever they're plugged into. And man, and that's a great way to wrap up this whole thing right now, because playing with you at Norms, man, you picked up a guitar that you had never played, and I listened to you right there, and I was like, yeah, that's Ahren Shreeve. That's your sound is here, and it's here, and it's right here. So you didn't need your pedal board or anything to sound like you, and that's that's definitely where I'd say we all want to be, and high praise because you sound great. And but yeah, man, that I want to just thank you so much, Ahren, for coming on Just Riffin, and I want to let everybody know. Obviously, you've picked up on, if you don't know Ahren's playing already and haven't checked him out, be sure to follow him on his socials. He's really easy to follow, or really easy to find. Ahren Shreeve, and Ahren,
Spelled a little weird, but
it is
I mean, if
spelled.
you just catch the spelling, then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Make sure you get the spelling correct, and it's right here in the video description and all that stuff. You can copy and paste it if you have to. But Ahren has tabs. What did you say? 32 tabs right now out on your site?
There are 32 videos that I've posted on Instagram that that people have especially kind of been drawn to. That I wrote them all out. So like solos or just guitar demos that I've tabbed out and put the tabs up on my website shop. Yeah, so definitely see if there are any of those that would be inspiring to you.
Yeah, help Ahren out, you guys. This is the type of, in this modern day, transcribing these great licks and learning the licks from a guy like Ahren himself. This is a really cool way to support artists like Ahren and I. So I'd encourage everybody to go follow him, check out his tabs. I know that you teach as well. You have group classes, and so just make sure that you hop on the Ahren bus because there's a lot of great stuff going on. I've been following you for years, and just it's awesome to see you progress, see you playing with great people, and it was definitely a blast to play with you at Norm's. That was a really great surprise.
That was fun. Yeah, thank you for the shout out.
Totally, man.
What are your goals for this year, and what do you have coming up this year?
Thanks for asking, man. Well, one thing is I do have this signature Jules Leyhe Liquislide. And this slide is really cool. It's filled with liquid. And as far as slides go, this is definitely it. So it's filled with liquid, but it also has this inner kind of grippy, really nice texture so that you can really feel it. And when you're playing like microtonal, like really specific slide guitar sounds, this slide helps me get the most detail out of all my playing that I've ever really felt. So I partnered up with this company. They're awesome guys. Liquislide. We have a signature Jules Leyhe Liquislide out now. That I used the pinky one, but they have 3 different sizes for your other fingers in case anybody doesn't play pinky. I have masterclass courses that are available. Right now I have a Derek Trucks course and a modern blues masterclass, and they're both just one of the videos that a lot of people know me by is this Ultimate Slide Masterclass video that's on YouTube. And that's a 2-hour free slide guitar lesson that covers a lot of kind of getting you off the ground playing slide. But I wanted to expand upon that in these other courses. So I have a number of courses that are coming out, and I'm working on getting group courses and just all sorts of educational stuff. I really want to share what I've learned from doing this for 20 years and really putting my whole heart and soul into it for the whole time. So it's just been great to meet everybody. YouTube's such a cool way to meet people from all around the world. So this year, working on reaching more people with educational stuff. The YouTube channel is definitely going to have some new types of videos. We have some like field trips where I'm going out into the world and meeting cool people, and we're documenting it. And my buddy Nico Sotomayor, he shoots all my YouTube video stuff, and he's a really talented guy. The way he lights a shot and the way he tells stories he's a filmmaker. And so we have a lot of not just guitar lesson stuff, but kind of like fun follow Jules around on these adventure videos that we're going to be putting out too. So there's a lot coming up this year.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to follow along and see all that stuff come into action. The 2-hour like slide course sounds really cool. Like a lot of people are interested in slide, and that's such a good way to get into it. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
start
man.
checking that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I
you
had
guys.
one quick
Yeah,
question
yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
I've been curious to hear like if you have a guilty pleasure music that you listen to that maybe it
Oh,
doesn't have anything to
man.
do with guitar, but like, is there any artist or album that you listen to that's sort of a guilty pleasure?
That's a great question. A total guilty pleasure song that I have right now is Always Be My Baby, Mariah Carey. And man, it's funny. I can just say that because I've learned so much on slide guitar playing that song. It's in the key of E, and it only modulates up a half step at the end for the last chorus. And if you can learn those licks on slide guitar and her phrasing and those seven note
Yeah.
runs, it's all
The
pentatonic
melody.
stuff.
The melody is so good though. I like this. And doing the harmonies. That's a great melody. I totally see it. Yeah.
Man, so honestly, like that's the best. I mean, I've grown up listening to so much music that like would kind of surprise people if I even mention it. But I think we all love a lot of music, even though you might know me as like a slide guitar guy or something. But I would say that's the most sort of guilty pleasure. Like that's been my jam for a while now, and I just keep getting new stuff every time I listen to that song. Yeah, that's total guilty pleasure for me. What would be your guilty pleasure or a band or something that?
Yeah, lately I don't even know whether to consider it a guilty pleasure or just own it because it's such good music. But Charlie XCX the Brat album and her remix Brat, so good. Like
Yeah.
melodies, rhythms, all the details and production. Um, it's very cool. All the little effects and nuances and um, like I said, like the melodies are really cool and just like so a lot of polyrhythms in there and really cool choices in production. So I don't maybe relate to the lyrics as much, but the the sound of it, the melodies and rhythms are very very cool and inspiring. Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is like, turns out music can just be really fun too. That's not a bad thing for people who are like professional musicians to kind of keep in mind. It's not necessarily like about having the best slide solo or whatever. It's like, hey, does it feel good? Is it really fun? Because that counts for so much too. So I think that's it's cool to just kind of like have a lot of fun, dig in music. It's all great for different reasons. So I love that example. That's a great, and I want to go check that out. I'm not that familiar with that record, so I want to listen to that, man.
I gotta send you my my Brat faves.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
want to
fun.
hear your Brat faves
Yeah.
for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Jules. This was so fun.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron. And hey, everybody, stay tuned. We're going to have a bunch of Just Riffins with a lot of my favorite guitar player friends, get to know each other, and just, have a really good time talking about techniques and what we love about the guitar. And hope you guys all had a great time. We'll catch you at the next one. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Thank you. See ya.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Jules Leyhe. I'm thrilled to announce that my Derek Trucks Slide Guitar Masterclass is now available. This class is over 2 hours of in-depth study of Derek Trucks' greatest licks, his signature sounds. Everything that you're going to learn in this course is designed to make you a better player and ultimately make you sound more like yourself. I'm a Berklee College of Music graduate and a professional musician of the last 15 years. I've shared the stage with Buddy Guy, Jimmy Vaughn, Chris Kane, and a slew of other blues greats. They've taken me under their wing and have taught me so many things that I want to now share with you guys. Check the link in my bio or julesleyhemusic.com to get your Derek Truck Slide Guitar Masterclass today.